Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Making Your Digital Mark. I am your host, Lisa Apolinski, content creator and coach, and America's digital content futurist. And I am very excited to have my good friend and colleague and mentor, I'm going to throw all three of those into there, on the show today, Patrick McGowan. Patrick, this is going to be a fun conversation, and I think our listeners need to strap in and hold on because you and I have a good time when we talk.
We do. And is this where we put in the expletive warning?
Yes, this would where
If we're
we
gonna
put in that, some F-bombs may drop, and that's
exactly. I'm
okay.
sorry, I just set up my new office and I forgot to put my caution F-bomb sign behind me as I could have. I'm looking at it right now, but
Yeah,
yes, I have a sign that says caution
yep,
F-bombs.
absolutely. So, Patrick, I'm going to let you introduce yourself really fast to
Yeah.
our viewers so they get a flavor of who you are.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's really a pleasure to be here today. It's always good to have a conversation with you. Always a highlight, always learn something. So this is a joy today. I am Patrick McGowan. I run a little company called Punchin Communications. We've been around for about 4 years. Started out in the space of helping people have more power, presence, and credibility on camera. And since then, since this was a startup over the last 4 years, with a lot of iterations, I think I'm on iteration number 7 or 8 at this point. But I've really gotten back to my roots in communications generally and facilitation. And in my background, I've probably facilitated over or nearly, don't want to overstate it, but nearly 500 multi-hour, multi-team, multi-day meetings. And in that, and one of the highlights from one of those meetings, I actually had a physician. I was in healthcare for a long time, and we were on the third or fourth in a series of these over the course of a year. And one day, one of the physicians actually said, "Patrick, we haven't heard from you." And I just said, "Well, I'm just the facilitator." And he's like, "Yeah." And I said, I'm not a physician." And he said, "Well, can't we just make you a physician for a day?" And I'm like, "Sure, if that's what you want to do." So that was a real honor for him to be able to say that. And so I'm helping executives and entrepreneurs learn the art and craft of communicating better, more effectively, and communicating to build off of my 4 years to help them communicate with power, presence, and credibility.
Nice. I love that. Now you are someone I lean into to make sure that I'm not slipping into the marketing aspects and actually looking at having a real conversation. And,
Yep.
I, you know, we started having a conversation before we started recording, and I was like, "Oh, wait, we have to we have to get this on camera." What do you feel is the difference between marketing and communicating, and how do they overlap? Like, where is
Yeah.
that gray area where people have to really start to discern what they're doing?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Let's start with communication first, because communication is the really broad term, but often departments will be classified as marketing and communications.
Right.
And I think that where I look at the difference is, okay, so everything's communications. Business is the business of talk. Everything we do in business relies on our ability to be able to share information, connect with other people, and have conversations. And so that's the real general broad sense of it. But I think that the difference between marketing and communications, often marketing is one way.
Yes.
So it's very much of a one to many kind of, and sales is often one to one, depending on whether or not it's a complex sale or not. But with marketing, it is that one to many. Communications, I like to look at communications as what are we saying in between our marketing and our sales? What are we saying in that email back to the client? What are we saying in that email to the team to get the team rallied behind a new customer and making sure that their experience is full of all the right hospitality? Communications happens in video, just as we're talking about. One of the things that I learned along the way, and one of the things that you and I both try to do, is how you show up says a lot about you.
Yes.
And in fact, you say a lot before you say anything, particularly on video, but we've kind of been automatic about it in person. It's like, yeah, I'm going to wear my nice shirt. I'm going to iron it. I'm going to, I'm going to make sure I put on a belt on my pants. Well, I'm going to wear pants that require a belt. I mean, video is a little easier in some ways. Some ways it's a little more complicated. But all of those aspects are communications. And I think the question that comes to mind is, what am I communicating? Who is communicating is such an essential question. It's, every actor, or actually the best actors, will do research into the character that they're going to play, and they're going to create a full bio around this character so that when they can embody that individual. We got to do the same things for ourselves.
Yes.
And that then that's how we show up. It's genuine, it's authentic, but it doesn't stop there. It has also motivation and purpose. So
Yes.
there's a lot of moving pieces between this idea of marketing and communications as a whole. And we can even throw sales in there as well, because who you are communicates a lot in terms of what you're able to accomplish.
And you mentioned something that got me thinking about the whole process of really getting to the end goal, which is the sale, the revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when you look at marketing, a lot of people focus on that one-to-many, right? They do a direct mail, or they send out a massive email, or like on LinkedIn, they do a bunch of in-mail messages.
Yep.
And when you respond to it, that's when the real work should be happening and should already have taken place. There already should be a plan of, how are you processing? What are you communicating? What's the call to action? What are you hoping to do with these individuals who respond? And I've noticed time and time again, they spend all this time, energy, resources, and money on the marketing aspect. And then when you actually raise your hand and go, oh, I'd like to learn more. Oh, can I schedule? They ghost you. It's like they drop the ball. They have no idea how they're communicating, what they're communicating, what the process is. It's like it's it it reminds me of, like, if you're on a dating app, and I haven't been on a dating app in a long time, but you know, some individuals will tell me, yeah, I sent out messages to all sorts of matches, and then I got one back and got a response and I didn't know what to do. It's like
Yeah.
they're not expecting you to respond. It's weird. It's weird.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about that. Let's dig into that just a little bit. We'll be in this kind of space between getting a little granular and being a little general.
Yeah.
But one things that kind of came to mind as you were talking is I would call it, let's call it the curse of automation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because we create this sequence of communications that does not necessarily create connection.
Absolutely.
So just because we're communicating doesn't mean that we're also connecting with other people. And I see this all the time, the general, and here's sort of and I'll call it the curse of automation, because it has to be generalized. And I got to say, it's really funny. I know that there are some people out there who are trying to let AI do this for them.
Ugh. Yeah.
And they are bombing
Hmm.
because just for the record, if anybody's looking me up, I've never done entertainment media news reporting in Kenya, but somewhere along the way, AI thought I did, and I've gotten those emails.
No.
Yes, yes. And I'm just reading this, and it's just like, we really admire Punchin and the work that you're doing in the entertainment business, entertainment media business in Kenya, or so, or like
Like,
that.
oh my God.
It is
That's
like,
crazy.
it
Wow.
is. And I took a screenshot of it because it's like, okay, so when do I post this on LinkedIn and just let everybody know that this isn't what I do?
Yeah.
I think the communication, when we communicate, we have to understand our own motivations. And yes, it is, we're all in business. And so, yes, we have to, at a very basic technical level, we want to make the sale. The best salespeople out there don't want to just make a sale. They want to connect with uh, potential customers in a way that is going to be meaningful and impactful.
Right.
And I like the title of a book. I'm going to butcher this, but let's get real or let's not talk. Because either you want me to help you solve an actual bona fide problem, and I may or may not be able to do it. But the point is to get, our communications needs to get to a place where we can have a real conversation.
Yes.
We
And
can't automate our way out of this, or
right.
we're going to automate our way into a corner, and then we're going to say, okay, how do we get here? Well, let's look at
Right.
our priorities. Is it really to connect with humans? Or is it just to be able to use technology in order to get that lucky 1 to 2% out of the 100 or the 1,000 or the 10,000 emails that we sent out?
Yes, exactly. And not only is it, can I solve this problem, but can I solve it in a way that the prospect or the client will trust that it has been solved? So
Yes.
I live in the world of multiple right answers, as you know, and there's
Yes.
more than one way to skin a cat, right? And to be able to solve it in the way that I know works and that I've seen results is a whole additional level of trust and connection. And I think a
Hmm.
lot of companies or a lot of clients that I've worked with, especially consultants, especially in the service industry, where there is different paths to a future success state.
Yep.
Are you allowing the client to dictate how you get there? And by doing so, you've lost your area of genius. You've lost that
Yeah.
differentiator. And then the
Yeah.
client's like, well, I don't see the value in this. I don't see why I'm paying for this because this isn't innovative or this isn't transformative. And you've allowed the client to tie your hands to go that route. So
Yep.
how are you building that trust and then also really putting a boundary saying,
Yeah.
no, I don't do it that way. And
Yep.
this is why.
Yeah. There are a lot of, we're talking about communications. And one of the things that my brother, uh, Eugene, shared with me a while ago, he's been in sales, he's been in technology, he's been around the block a few times. And one of sort of his phrases is the first to know, N-O. And the reason why he
Mm,
says that is because if you're asking the right questions, again, communication,
yeah,
if you're digging into both the problem and the potential solution, well, let's say the potential problem and the potential solution,
right.
to clarify, then that conversation, it's not just a discovery for the client, It's not just about, yes, we're trying to figure out what the client wants to buy and then sell it to them on one level. That's true, but it's not the whole picture.
Right.
It shortchanges the potential for both a maybe even a bigger relationship, a more significant impact.
Hmm.
And that's why having the motivation to go into a conversation where it's going to be mutually beneficial.
Right.
I know I can achieve X for this client because I've already laid it out. I understand it. And it's in that conversation that the client, that conversation becomes a free sample of what it will be like to work with you.
Yes.
And but to your point, I mean, it's like we get to a point where we kind of give away our power. And I'm a believer of the practice that, I am just as important as my client. His success is my success, or her success is my success. So it matters to me, but I'm not going to be in a subservient relationship necessarily, right? I am serving, but I'm serving from a place of equality. And when we walk into a conversation, just understanding that we have power, we have presence, we have credibility, we have something to give. And I
Right.
really like how David C. Baker puts it. He says, when you are an expert, the only thing you get to withhold is your expertise. Go ahead and walk away if it's not the right deal.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And because that's what we have, we're bringing our expertise. The client is bringing the problem. And the goal in this isn't that we sell them on something. The goal is we both feel that we are voluntarily enrolling in a relationship that's going to solve a problem and achieve a certain goal.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I know a lot of clients go, well, I do need I'm cash strapped, or I really want the sale. Instead of worrying about the sale,
Yep.
worry about, like we were talking earlier, life is too short to give away your power and to give away your time. And
Yeah.
it's interesting. So I just read The Integrated Entrepreneur by
Mhm.
Ran. I think her last name is Laterna. I hope I have that right, but it's The Integrated Entrepreneur. And in that, she talks about this idea of time is a non renewable asset.
Yeah.
Like, if you think of it that way, that your time, it can never be renewed again. And there's no guarantee how much time you'll have in the future.
Yep.
So when you're talking about communication and sharing your value, part of that needs to be your value of authority,
Yep.
why they should listen to you, why you're credible. And if they don't see the value in your abilities, they're not going to value your time. They're not going to
Hmm.
value your price point. They're not going to value the relationship. And that's a huge time suck for you
Yeah.
to be spending all that time trying to prove yourself to a client that may or may not ever get there because of how you started the relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such an important piece to really, and this is where that work of who is coming to the table on your
Mhm.
end,
Yeah.
who is the person who is communicating, who is the person who is engaging with this other human being, and do you value who you are, what you do, your expertise, and your time to the degree that you're willing to say, this isn't the right deal.
Right.
I like what you guys are doing, but I'm not the right person for it.
Right. And
And you
that's
just
okay.
kind of walk away from that.
Yeah. And that's okay to know that this
Yeah.
isn't the right fit. And I want to make sure that you're as satisfied as I am in the outcome. Absolutely.
Yep.
If you're dragging someone kicking and screaming across the finish line, that's never fun. And,
Yep.
part of, with the greatest personal brand story ever told, and my focus on content creation and personal branding, part of
Hmm.
that is around how do you attract right fit clients? And when I ask my clients, when I say right fit, I'm talking about respectful, show up on time, do the work, pay on time. That's a right fit for me. It's not just I can solve it, but I can solve it and they're appreciative of the fact that I've solved it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also one of those where the right fit client is the client, and the right fit client is somebody who you've also been able to charge at the rate that you know you're worth,
Yes.
right? Or the value of the project. So the floor is the value you know you're worth. That's your minimum. The value pricing is anything over and beyond that, because there are certain clients and there are certain projects that require value pricing.
Right.
That but the idea behind the right fit client, another way of saying that is, are you excited to take their phone call?
Yes.
So we're
Or do you
talking
look at
about
your
that.
phone and go, "Oh,
I know. Oh no, it's Lisa again.
yeah,
No.
ugh." Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Because it's like, again, life is too short to just kind of give it all away.
Yeah.
There's always going to be those clients who you thought were going to be great, and then they turn out not so great, but that's okay.
Mhm.
And maybe you don't renew, but at
Yeah.
least you know that for the next round, right? And this becomes an iterative process of finding the people you really want to work with, and the
Yeah.
people who really want to work with you, who get it and understand it,
Yeah.
and who you want to pick up the phone with.
Right.
If you're cringing when you open it, when you pick up the phone, that's not a fun thing. But this goes
No.
back to, we were talking about the difference between marketing and communications.
Yeah.
So this communications is what happens in the relationship with another human being around a mutually agreed upon problem that you're going to work together to make sure gets solved and done and achieves its stated goals. And so how we communicate in between is just as important as what we're putting out in our marketing material,
Right.
or sort of the sales script when somebody calls the very first time, and what are the questions we want to ask,
Mhm.
and what does that say, and then what does that, I mean, we may be getting too granular for some people. This isn't something you have to spend 3 or 4 days on. This is like the 5 minute. If I ask this question, what is that? What's the potential interpretation of that question?
Right.
It doesn't have to get more complicated that, or even more time consuming than that. It's a minute to 2 minutes. Oh, I think that this is the subtext of that question. That's how I want to ask it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's how I'm going to ask it.
Right. So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
When I work with clients and we're separating marketing from communications, and again, the business of talk. And I tell
Yeah.
them that, it's important to highlight expertise, to share knowledge. And they say, I don't want to give away all my trade secrets. How do you manage that with your clients,
Mm.
especially when they're being interviewed live or they're on a webinar or they're in a facilitated meeting where it's important for them to show their area of genius? How do you get them comfortable with doing that and not
Yeah.
feel like I've just given away everything and now I'll never get business?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, can I ask a question to your question?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So Lisa, when you're preparing, because you're also a professional speaker,
Mhm.
when you're preparing what you're going to present to an audience of 500 people,
Mhm.
um, I've seen you speak, I've seen you present, and you give away a lot of really valuable information.
Yeah.
So how do you, well, I'm going to flip the question. When you're doing a professional presentation like that, what do you leave out?
So I wouldn't say it's what I leave out. It's how much information I have and how much information my audience can absorb. So when I'm thinking about my area of genius, which is content creation and personal branding, right?
Hmm.
Um, there is so much information I could give to somebody. And I
Yeah.
do one-on-ones. I call them dealer's choice, where someone can pay 90 minutes with me and they basically get my brain for 90 minutes. And, you know, it's it's anything goes, any question asked, whatever. I have to pull back a little bit on not fire hosing my audience, not fire hosing my clients. So
Yep.
when people worry about that, I think it comes from one of two areas. More than likely, or an 80-20 rule. 80% is they're afraid they're giving everything away, but what they're giving is 1/100th of all the expertise and information that they could give.
Yep.
And the second 20%, or maybe it's more like 90-10, the second is they haven't developed enough of their skill set down into their niche, really a niche within a niche, to have, a whole gold mine of information that they should have and they haven't quite mined into yet. Um,
Yeah.
I think most people land in the 90% rule. And like when I talk about when I do my personal branding book, um, or any of my books, I have all sorts of information in here. If you bought this
Yep.
book for, I think it's $15,
Yep.
you're going to get all sorts of info already. I might
Yep.
dive into 2 sections in here because if I did everything, I would be trapping those people for days
Hmm.
and they wouldn't be able to take bathroom breaks or go eat or get coffee or anything. And they would just be like, this is torturous. So
Yeah.
when I only get 15 minutes or 30 minutes or 45 minutes, I really have to make sure I'm giving them 2 or 3 things that they go, wow, I can walk out of here and implement that right now.
You're right.
Hell, I can do it while I'm on the phone, right? I could pull up my phone and start doing this. This is great. My goal when I do these dealer choice sessions, when I'm on stage, I want to spark just one thought within my
Yeah.
audience that just touch and moves and inspires them so much that they are compelled to fix something in their personal branding. They
Yep.
can't unsee it and they gotta fix it. They gotta do it. Like they can't hold still. And I've seen them pull out their phones and start fixing their LinkedIn in real time. Like, oh shit, I gotta do that. And that's my goal with them.
Yep.
So yes, I give away quite a bit, and no 2 talks that I do are ever the same.
Yeah.
So you could hear me speak on the same book over and over and over, and you'll get something new out of every single time.
Right.
And that's also because I find out more about my audience. Like you talked about who's speaking and who are you speaking to?
Yep.
And when I have that additional aspect, I can tailor my talk so that again, I want to hit a nerve on them. Like you and I were talking earlier that when you read my book and then you added your chapter in here, which was awesome. Um, you didn't like it. I made you uncomfortable. Good. That's my goal. I want to get you out of your comfort zone. I want to hit a nerve where you're like, ow. And it sparks you to do something. That is my whole purpose. My purpose is to inspire you for greater purpose.
Yeah. And I would add to that, particularly in your case and mine and anybody in sort of a service business or consulting business, the real value that you provide is not information. It is connection and attention
Yes.
to a very specific, well-defined objective. And every potential client is either running from a wolf or they're running towards a gold medal. And what you share, either from the stage or on social media, this took me a long time to get comfortable with, is a demonstration of what you can do for the right fit client.
Yeah.
And so when we feel like we're giving it all away, okay, so maybe that's true. The other side of it is maybe you're not giving enough away. You
Yeah.
feel like you're giving too much away. Maybe you're still not giving enough away. But at the end of the day, what ends up happening, I think you see this as you post, you're frequent, you're consistent
Hmm.
in your social media presence because you have a presence out there. You're clear, clear as kind. And what it is an opportunity for people who like what they see and hear and are attracted to your way of thinking and doing. And so it becomes, yes, it's a free sample. We'll put quotes around the word free. But I think the goal is, I mean, in today's market, 80, what is it, 85% of buyers are doing some type of research online. I
Hmm.
mean, they're literally making their decision before they pick up the phone and reach out to you.
Right. Right.
You know, I got a telemarketing call yesterday talking about a personal loan offer. I'm like, I don't know you. I don't know your organization. I have no idea why you're calling me other than you got a big long list. This is not a personal loan. There's nothing personal about this quote unquote personal loan. And I'll be damned if I'm going to give you my information when I
Right.
don't know you, your organization, or anything about what you're trying to sell me.
Yeah.
Um, there's just too many hucksters and hackers out there for me to
Yeah.
just take a random phone call from somebody and start divulging information.
Yep.
And when we realize that, is my statistic relatively close, Lisa, like 85%?
Yeah. That
They're going
sounds
to do
about right. 85, 86%, something like that. Yeah. And it's
when they
probably
talk to
higher
you.
now. Yeah.
It's probably higher now, and so in my own experience, even when we look at, say, a communications pipeline, so communications pipeline, including, you know, everything we're doing from a marketing standpoint, everything we're doing from a social media standpoint, everything we do from a LinkedIn in-mail standpoint, right? That's all what I would refer to as both I mean, it's part of the discovery process today, where discovery used to only be part of the sales pipeline.
Right.
So when we start looking at how we're communicating, what we're communicating, who is communicating, then we realize that all of our marketing, all of our communications, all of those connection points, that network of connections that we have, is really pre-discovery.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
not just marketing anymore. It's actually pre-discovery. And so are we giving something, just like we would in a call, are we giving something to somebody to let them know that we're the right choice for helping them fix this? Every customer, I mean, I don't know what the percentage is, but I'm sure it's relatively high. The thing is there are, particularly like in the marketing space, there are a lot of companies who get a lot of presentations and a lot of pitches, and then they take the best of every idea and then hire one company that they want to execute this.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And there's always going to be that. Um, but I think if you really become a master of that pre-discovery, it just makes that discovery phone call that much more valuable, because now you're connecting at a human to human basis. The
Mhm.
information's already been shared. They've already made their decision. Now they're going to confirm it. And it's in that conversation where real connection can happen, and confirmation and trust.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. You made a comment, and I wanna dive into this a little bit more. Clear is kind. And I was like, "That's true," but I wanna see what your take on that is, especially with
Yeah.
the business of talk.
Well, here's the thing we live, society today is constantly asking, who can I trust? And there are a lot of people who put a lot into being nice. And so when I say clear is kind, I'm actually quoting Brene Brown. And um, it is honest. Um, it is verifiable, but it's not always nice. It's not always what people want to hear. And so often, I mean, if we're really going to create genuine relationships and create real connection with other people, then one, we have to be clear. And I mean, even in my own writing, I've gotten away from a lot of adjectives and adverbs, um, just because oftentimes you don't need them. And then to be kind is a two-way street. I'm being kind to myself. So I'm going to go back to the title of the book, integrated.
The
What was it?
integrated entrepreneur, the
The
integrated
integrated
entrepreneur.
entrepreneur. So to I'm gonna dig into the word integrated, which the root of integrated is integer, which means whole. And integer is the root of also integrity.
Ah, yep.
So when we begin to talk about clear is kind, am I showing up as a whole person? Um, have I done my, you talk about personal branding, and I think it gets, well, you know better than I do that there are probably as many people there are in the world, there are as many definitions of personal branding.
Yes, absolutely.
that, that was a very nice eye roll. Uh, so we have to really focus on both parts of that phrase. We have to focus in on the personal. Am I showing up? Am I showing up the best version of myself?
Right,
We all, we're different people in different situations, different circumstances. Am I showing up as the best version of myself? And then is there consistency when we talk about branding? Is there consistency and some predictability that when Lisa shows up on video, oh yeah, that's Lisa. When
right.
Patrick shows up on video or in person, oh yeah, that's Patrick. I mean, the funny thing is if I had a personal brand, everybody here in Sioux Falls would say that if they know me and I'm in the crowd, they may not see me right away, but they will probably hear my laugh. And so they know, oh, Patrick McGowan's here. Okay,
Right.
great. So I
Yeah.
think does that answer the question by what I
Yeah,
mean
yeah, it
by
absolutely
clear
does.
is
Because
kind?
I I also was looking at it from, I've heard clarity over cleverness. So when you're
Yeah.
clear, you're allowing your reader or audience to understand your viewpoint a lot faster and to build that trust. Um, you know, jargon and big terminology, I feel should be left for the lawyers.
Yeah, yeah, and the other piece of that is be direct,
Yes.
because what a client doesn't want to hear, nobody wants to look back and say, oh, they were just blowing smoke
Right.
up some orifice
Right.
and I got bamboozled.
Bamboozled. Yeah.
I mean, nobody, uh, clear, direct, kind, you know, there's so much noise in the world. And this is something over the years that we've known each other that you and I've talked about ad nauseum sometimes, is just the amount of noise.
Yes. Oh,
And when
yeah.
we really look at clear as kind as both a practice and a strategy, it's a differentiation. There's so many people who they might even be using AI to help create content for them just so that they can be posting every day because they don't have time, and they'll take 5 minutes, take whatever chat GPT spits out, post it on LinkedIn as a thing. It's just adding to the noise. There's no differentiation.
Yep.
There's nothing unique about that.
Right. You're just regurgitating other people's content.
You're just regurgitating.
Yeah.
And this is where your expertise, the personal side of personal branding really makes a difference. And I'm going to go back to motivation, because the motivation, I would say that my you and I've talked about sort of my mission and my tagline, and that is to empower more human connection.
Right.
I the other version of that is, because of the day and age that we live, I think part of that is also empowering human reconnection. It's like we
Yes.
kind of have to relearn how to just talk to people. But I'm actually encouraged my kids, who are all in their early 20s, and they're learning how to pick up the phone and have a conversation with somebody rather than go through an online portal.
Right.
And I would like to say that that's a trend we're going to see more and more of, just because it's human.
Right.
We're social creatures, and it's important that we honor that and respect that
Absolutely.
in real and meaningful ways.
Yeah. So you talked about really the transformation that you've taken over these 4 years with your organization.
Hmm.
How has talk and communication, in your expert opinion, really morphed as well over these last, really, since the pandemic? I mean, I hate to use that
Yeah,
as the point, but really, how have the last 4 years really kind of shifted the way we communicate with one another?
yeah. Well, and those 4 years were impactful. Going on 5 years next year, and I last 5 to 7 years. So pre-pandemic and mid-pandemic and post-pandemic. Um, it's really been fascinating for me. What's morphed is, and I saw it early with the idea that we needed to have more presence on camera,
Yeah.
when almost all of business was on Zoom. Um, and one of my chief complaints on a personal level was I looked like a potato on camera. Today, I'd like to say that I'm a little bit better than a potato. Um, but that was, and I had to really kind of do the soul searching, because I didn't want it to just be about vanity.
Right.
So how do I kind of convince myself? Well, vanity is a force for good. I'm not just doing it for myself, but when I feel good and I know um, when I know I feel good and I'm showing up the best I can, um, I'm going to perform better, and we all
Yes.
do, right? So that's like mid-pandemic. I think we saw within a year to 2 years of the pandemic everybody wanting to get back together.
Yes.
So now communication has to be a both and, not an either or. We have to be prepared to have the same level of presence in person as we do on Zoom or across the lens. And it's but the fundamentals are still the same. The
Yep.
fundamentals are, am I showing up as the best version of myself on my best day? Um, how am I how am I sharing? There's a level of vulnerability that we not just what we feel because we're in front of a camera, but when we're in front of a group. Um, what is my energy that I'm bringing to this work, whether in person or across the lens? So a lot, I mean, we live in a different time. We get to take advantage of the efficiencies of of being on video like we are today. We also get the benefit of um, you know, you I could be in I could get a ticket and be in New York City tomorrow afternoon if I wanted to or
Right.
needed. So it's very much of a hybrid world. And not only that, but it's not just communications and marketing, but it's also, just in general, remote work.
Right.
A lot of people still working from home, a lot of employers requiring at least 2 or 3 days in the office. A lot has changed and a lot has stayed the same. And what has stayed the same is the fact that we're still social creatures. We
Mhm.
still need each other. We still need a community. We still need collaboration. And I say need intentionally. It's not just something we want. This is how we are wired. So I know you've been on record to say stories, people respond to stories because that's how we are wired. We're wired for stories.
People are hardwired for stories, and your story matters. Absolutely.
And I roll that up one more level to why are we wired for stories? Because stories are a core critical function of what it means to be social creatures. It's how because we're social, we want those stories. That's how we connect with other human beings. And so regardless of the medium or the media,
Right.
uh, we need to put ourselves in a position to connect with others. And that's really kind of my mission. When I talk about communications, I'm in the business of talk. How we say anything is how we say everything. And um, it's who we are. And I was just listening to a podcast. Um, Robert Coleridge, who used to be the host of Radiolab, he even said, how we write is who you are. How you
Mm.
write is who you are. So it's writing. We're all now multimedia experts in a way. It's writing, it's social media, it's video, it's audio, it's in person. That's a lot of channels for the
Yeah.
independent professional to try to manage and actually get and actually achieve a level of mastery. So what's the shortcut? Uh, be the best version of yourself.
Right.
You're just really there to connect with other human being, and when that's your motivation, um, really wonderful things can happen.
I think we could talk about this for hours.
Well,
Totally, we could talk about this for
that's
hours and hours
normal.
and hours.
I don't. Yeah, you don't have enough storage on your
I don't have enough storage on
uh,
my laptop to do that.
for the video. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Patrick, if the audience wanted to get in touch with you, to talk
Yeah.
to you, to learn more about what you do and how you might be able to help them, how can they do that?
The best way would be email. So Patrick at Punchin, PUNCHN.io. Patrick at punchin.io would probably be the best way. They can also go out to my website. I think all my digits might be out there. But they can. My website is a little bit of a work in progress. Again,
So is mine.
another channel in which I have to have some level of mastery.
Yeah.
But I'm hacking my way through that.
Yep.
But yeah, just email me. That would be the best.
Awesome. Patrick, thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to me today. This was amazing. And as always, it gives me more food for thought in how I'm communicating and if I'm slipping into marketing or if I'm actually focusing on that connection. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it has been an honor. It's always good to talk with you. I learn something every time, whether it's in the questions that you ask or the points that you make. And you and I didn't disagree a whole lot in this conversation, but just so that all your viewers and listeners understand, Lisa and I disagree on a few things too. It
Yeah.
just happened to not have happened in this last hour.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is hilarious, yeah, absolutely.
So
Well,
next episode we'll bring the sparks.
yes. And we keep talking about doing a podcast. We have to do that at
We
some
do.
point.
We do.
My
I'm
God, we've been talking about
I'm
that for
really
like 2 years. I'm
I
like, oh, we
know, I
got to
know.
do it. We got to do it.
I'm actually really good at I've been doing a podcast for a client just over the last year where we just published episode 35.
Nice.
So that is one of the areas that again, it's one of those where I help people look good
Yep.
and sound good.
Yep.
And I've developed enough of a skill set to help others do that. So there's a lot that goes into a podcast that people don't realize.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a lot more work, and it's hard to automate some of those things. And I actually be happy with the automation as
Right.
well.
Right.
So hire somebody to help you, and you're going to get a lot more of your podcasts out in the market for your people to find you.
Yeah. And if they can find you, that's half the battle right there.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Well, thank you all for watching today's episode. And if I can leave you with one thing, and it's going to be a new one, communication relies on human connection, as Patrick was saying. And if you focus on the connection, you too can cut through the digital noise. I'm Lisa Apolinsky. We'll see you next time.
Awesome.